Hello, I'm Tim Moody, President and CEO of Pan Global Resources. Pan Global has projects in Spain, focused primarily on copper in the Iberian Pyrite Belt, and now copper and gold at a new project up in northern Spain called Cármenes.
Right, and we're going to talk about that today. You've obviously just announced some drill results, and maybe even talk about some of that mineralized characterizations up there. So, how's things been since I last saw you? Busy?
Well, certainly busy. We've been putting out some good news, and we've been hosting a number of site visits. There's certainly been a real step up in the interest from externally in what we're doing. A lot more inbound calls. The share price is up 50% from beginning of the year. So albeit from a low base, we're still, I feel, strongly undervalued for where we should be. Things at least seem to be looking up at this time of the year. Yeah, there's a lot of good results to come.
Right. Well, it's been quite Spanish weather out here, so we better get on with it before we all melt. A UK heat wave. Who knew? Just talk about the sort of recent results. Maybe give us some of the numbers. I guess more importantly, can you sort of unpack some of the geological controls behind these kind of higher grade zones that you're seeing?
Yes. Okay. So the last news release was about the Cármenes project, where we're specifically sort of targeting it's a target called Providencia. It's really a breccia pipe or breccia style hosted type of mineralization. We were initially focused on an area where there's some old mine workings which were pulling out what we understand high grade copper-cobalt-nickel mineralization. They were producing a copper concentrate and a cobalt concentrate, both of which had some nickel in them, but no mention of gold. So anyway, this is just the first target in this area and our first drilling in this target, and it's the first time this area had ever been drilled. So we've got a 6-hole drill program planned. We've finished 3 of those holes. Those first 3 holes were targeting where the old mine workings were, drilling to the sides of them, and 1 hole through what we think was a sort of copper nickel cobalt breccia system, and all 3 of them have hit gold, which, as I said, wasn't known before, wasn't extracted before, but over quite wide intervals. So the first hole hit 46 metres of 1.1 grams gold or something thereabouts. The latest news release has also intersected some gold in similar grades, 10 metres at a gram, 4 metres at 2 grams, this sort of thing. But we also had a 4 metre interval of copper, cobalt, nickel mineralisation with a bit of gold as well, which has a combined metal grade, it's getting close to 3% copper equivalent. So, it's only a 4 metre width, but very nice looking material. And important to note, that's outside of the old mine workings. It's close to them, but not in them. So, a good start. A new gold target. Also, those last 2 drill holes, what they did show is that we've got a very wide breccia system. We had 110 metres with gold all the way through it pretty consistently. It was only 0.23 or thereabout, but it showed the system is fertile. It's a very wide system, and when you start looking at breccias of those sort of widths, that really gives you potential for some large volume.
So you're starting to see some like zonation or overprinting or multiple mineralizing events.
Yes.
Down there, yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the encouraging things. Of course, these breccias can be quite complicated, trying to unravel and what's the history there. But what you try to see with these things is the more overprinting, brecciation events, generally the more attractive the system. And then if you start to see sulfides filling in the porosity that's created by these breccia systems, then that's when you really start to see the system looking very, very attractive, and that's really what we're seeing at this point. So, very, very encouraging.
And you also had these kind of low grade gold over kind of wide intercepts. So how are you interpreting this, or are you interpreting this as a sort of large hydrothermal system with bulk tonnage potential, or are you kind of more focused on, or do you believe that maybe it's more like a vein breccia type hybrid?
I think that's the significance of these latest results. It's sort of showing you sort of potential bulk mineable target opportunity for gold. That's that's for us very significant. So it's gold from near surface over a very wide interval with some higher grade parts within that, with what looks maybe a core of this high grade copper, nickel, cobalt as well. So look, we're still trying to understand the system, but we do believe we are starting to unravel the stages of brecciation, which stages are more important, and what to look for the gold in particular. When you've got the copper, nickel, cobalt, you see the sulfides, but when some of this gold that we've got is not associated with sulfides, so that makes it harder to sort of predict. So we've had to go back to the drill core, try to see what it is that's what are the telltale signs that might sort of tell us whether we're into a gold-rich part of the breccia system or not. But very encouraged that we're seeing gold over such wide intervals and some of the grade zones as well.
So how do you then come at the drilling? Because obviously you're trying to sort of, I guess, observe, these kind of localized enrichment along structural corridors or kind of fluid pathways. So, but how does that affect the way that you go about drilling? How you plan to drill?
Yeah, so going into this target for the very first time, you don't really know what the geometry is going to be like until you drill it. So that's part of this first round of drilling, is trying to understand what's the geometry, what's the controls, and so on. We think the breccia itself is controlled by 2 or 3 intersecting structures or structural corridors. There seems to be a major one on the western side of it, which sort of dips away to the west, and another big regional east-west structure just to the north. So we think that's important as well. So we think it's probably related to what we call Permian extension period, which is a period in that area of high heat flow where you get intrusive activity and so on. About 70 kilometres to the west is a copper-gold skarn mine that's operating. It's been operating for 30 or 40 years. To the east is another gold deposit as well, but we know there are some intrusives, other telltale signs that this is a high heat flow setting, which is what you really want to start to see for a live hydrothermal mineralizing environment. So we're trying to unravel the controls, unravel the geometry as well, and I think we're starting to get a bit of a handle on that. But look, 3 more holes to go, and after we finish those, I think we'll be in a much better position then to start to sort of predict what the geometry might look like.
Okay, and it's interesting because when I look back to the conversations we've had previously about when you were doing sort of surface trenching or channel sampling, etc., how are these assays lining up with what you saw then?
Yeah, so the first 3 holes, as I say, were really targeting in and around where the old mine workings were. So of course the first hole hit this wide zone of gold on the southern side of these mine workings, outside the mine workings, which is completely unknown. We had no idea we were going to intersect that. We know there's a bit of gold around from our sampling inside. The next 2 holes we hit, hole 3 was off to the eastern side of those mine workings, and then another hole went right through them and showed the gold continuing off to the north. So it's really, at this stage, wide open in all directions. We haven't drilled the western side of it yet. We think the breccia may even get wider out that direction. So the next 3 holes, so important note, those first 3 holes are not within the gold anomaly, gold target area that we identified from the trenching and soil sampling and channel sampling that we did early this year. So the next 3 holes are going to be targeting that gold zone. So that's when you think we're seeing very wide zones of breccia, we're seeing wide intervals of elevated gold and with some higher grade zones within that. Well, what are we going to intersect when we drill the actual gold anomaly, where we have a channel sample of 37 metres of 3 grams, never been drilled? When we drill underneath and through that's going to be really exciting. And there's another trench even further east of that. We had 20 metres of 1.7 grams gold. Again, no drilling. We're going to drill under that as well. So that's going to be really exciting. Now, given what we've intersected in the first 3 holes.
Okay, so well, it will be, especially people are a little bit super excited about the price of gold at the moment. But just sticking with the kind of we'll call it byproduct for now. In terms of the copper, cobalt, and nickel, what do you? And it's a bit early days, but what are you hoping to learn in terms of the sulfide distribution? Are there kind of discrete phases, or is there some kind of matrix hosted phases? I mean, what does it look like?
Yeah, so at this stage, it looks like this. We've got a core with this copper, nickel, cobalt. We may be proven wrong later on, but with more of a gold halo. So, which the gold seems to be far more extensive. There is some gold we've got with the copper, nickel, cobalt, but it's not as high a grade as we've been seeing just outside. So, without sort of going through all the theory and so on too much, but what we think is going on is that these were originally limestones. They've had a sort of an event of what they call dolomitization. So they've had an event, an alteration stage which prepared the rocks, and then with this sort of subsequent faulting and so on, we've had repeated brecciation with accompanying like high heat flow, etc., which keeps creating porosity, if you like, for the metals to come in. So it wouldn't surprise me if the gold is one event and the sulfides is another event. So that's what we're trying to work out at the moment. But at the moment, the gold looks to be more related to a sort of a red hematite or iron-rich dolomite that's filling the matrix. And we're seeing a little bit of sulfide, fine sulfide that's overprinting some of that as well. So, I think it's going to take a little bit more drilling, revisiting the drill core and before we really fully unravel it. But we think we've probably seen at least somewhere between 3 and 5 stages of brecciation and alteration. So, it's a complicated system. But that's exactly what you want to see in a big breccia system.
Some of this though, you're gonna have to try and work. I think you've done this with some of the other assets, but in terms of trying to understand, and I'm looking at the grades that you've announced today. If I'm looking at the grades here, you're going to want to know the potential for byproduct credits on that. So in terms of the work going forward on the metallurgy, etc., how do you go about trying to understand the value, the per ton value?
Yeah, well, I think we'll see what we get with these next 3 drill holes and complete this program. And then we'll say, well, do we want to do some metallurgy or do we want to do a bit more drilling, investigative drilling to understand the system a little bit more? But look, I think we already have some information when we look at the multi-element chemistry from the drilling. So what we can see is that there's a gold only. A lot of the mineralization is gold only. It's not associated with necessarily the sulfides. There's no arsenic, bismuth, antimony, no copper, nothing. But it's just gold. So I think some of it may be oxide gold, which is weather related more likely, but it could be amenable to low cost leaching. Hence, if it's a bulk mineable target, that could be quite good news. But otherwise, we still have this below the depth of oxidation. We have this sort of gold only phase as well. But so I think that at this stage the gold is probably becoming the bigger target at Providencia. That doesn't mean to say copper, cobalt, nickel won't be more important than one of the other breccias. But at Providencia, the gold looks to be the thing that's giving the big volume. But this high-grade copper, nickel, cobalt zone is still attractive because of the grades. So, could have two different targets, if you like, within the one area.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So in terms of next stage, you've got three holes. You know where you're drilling. Nothing about today's announcement will change those things in terms of the targeting of the next 3 holes, does it?
No, not at all. Right. It just makes us even more enthusiastic to get those drill holes completed just as quickly as we can. So, the drill rig should be sort of wheeling its way back out there to drill those things in a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks, and then we should get assays back within what sort of time frame?
Usually about 3 weeks after. They're short holes, so we're talking,
6 to 8 weeks.
Okay. Allow for cutting and logging and getting it off the lab. But, sometime, all going well, end of July, early August, we should have the results.
Okay, and before I kind of get into, some of the other questions I want to ask you around the kind of geophysics and exploration potential across the portfolio. But it's been sort of tough year in Spain, right? Weather-wise, there's been a lot of things hit you, energy shortages and the like. How are you coping?
Yeah, well, look, we've still been able to make good progress. So, in other words, we're just a little bit behind on the drilling where we'd like to be, but we think we'll catch up on that. We had unusual amounts of rain, having had years of drought, a few years of drought where you really wanted some water. We've now had too much. It rained, I think, all of March and thereabouts, and in southern Spain, which is almost unheard of. That area where, particularly around the Bravo target area, when that black soil plain gets wet, it is very messy. So it made it very almost impossible to go in and drill that whilst the fields were so wet. And then, of course, we ran into the crops. So we've currently had to have a short pause while they harvest the wheat. But we should have a rig at Bravo turning again next week. So. So the next 3 holes at Bravo are going to be really exciting because we're now finally getting to where we think the strongest part of the Bravo target was some very attractive coincident geophysics. So we're looking forward to the next couple of holes at Bravo for sure.
Okay, and talk to me about, obviously you've used, I think, the electromagnetic and radiometric surveys at Cármenes in terms of understanding sort of structural alteration framework, etc. But did it meet your expectations? Did it exceed your expectations? Will we be using it more?
I'm glad you raised that. So, we weren't initially planning to do the helicopter geophysics survey at the Cármenes area, but there was a helicopter in the area, so we took advantage of that. Because it meant we wouldn't have to pay logistics cost if we wanted to bring a helicopter back. So you probably save 15 or 20,000 euros. So it really made sense to try and take advantage of that. And look, we're still working through this massive new data that we've got. It was a combined electromagnetic, magnetic, and radiometric survey. First of its kind, that is quite detailed. It also gives us what they call chargeability information, a bit like an IP. And because this is hilly terrain, this has given us the opportunity to really fast track the exploration in that area. So the first thing we did was look at, we know there's a breccia system with high grades at Providencia. We have another one about 1 kilometre to the south called Profunda. What are the signatures at those two based on the helicopter survey data, and then can we see similar features elsewhere in the area? And already we're seeing probably, I think I counted 20 or 30 targets in an area, so along strikes, a couple of kilometres each direction, 3 or 4 kilometres each direction. So we're still got a lot more data to go through. There's a lot more detailed processing of that we can do. But at this early stage, we're already seeing a number of really attractive looking targets in that area. So given the early success we've had at Providencia, I think the likelihood of us finding more of those is looking even better now than it was before. And thank goodness we took advantage of that opportunity to do that geophysics.
Are there any kind of other analogous vertical extensive pipes seen at other carbonated hosted systems globally that you kind of look to and say, well, actually, I think we might have something similar here?
Yeah, there are some systems around. I mean, at the end of the day, breccia pipes of different types around the world can have different dimensions, but essentially they're all breccias caused by similar process. Sometimes you've got an intrusive rock or something that's driving it, but other times you see it, other times you don't, and that's the case with Providencia. We don't see any intrusive rocks that might be the heat engine and the source of the fluids here. It might be just coming from a high heat flow. We don't know. But in terms of dimensions, initially we were using the Sumab deposit as a guide. This is a famous mine in Africa. produced, I think, 30 or 40 million tonnes. It goes from surface to about 1.5 kilometres depth, varies from a few metres up to, I think, maybe 100 metres width, something like this. Averages about 30 or 40 metres diameter. So, but very rich. So that was the model we were working off to begin with, and I think that's still valid. But at the end of the day, it's a breccia system. Big breccia systems like this are not that common. There are things like the Kidston pipe in Australia, really big ones like Las Bronces in Chile, which are more porphyry-related systems. But they're all breccias. Faraday, for example, are drilling a breccia system at the moment. Dimensions, the intervals, some of the intervals they're getting aren't that different to what we're getting in terms of width of the breccia. So, that answers your question.
No, I get it. Like, I'm sure a few more questions on it, but
you want to understand structural control. You want to understand geometry of the system.
You
want to look at the different phases. I mean, we know that this is a hydrothermal breccia of some sort. We just don't know what's the source of the metals. It could be from the surrounding rocks or whatever. But what you start to look at, what's the matrix composition in these breccias? Are the fragments altered? Are they coming from different parts? Which is telling you've got a system that's really throwing different rocks into the breccia, all of those sort of things. But what we are seeing is very strong alteration of some of the fragments in the breccia. Never seeing a variety of material in the matrix itself, including sulfides.
Okay. Let's skip to Escacena, because you're obviously moving towards that kind of maiden resource there, and that's going to give people a sense of the size of the price. But I think there's probably a bit more to it in terms of recoverability and all of those other variables which will affect the economics we need to study. So just tell us, how are things advancing on that front?
Yeah, I'm glad you've asked that question. We've been hosting some site visits, and SCP were just out on site. They wrote a report, and I think what's becoming apparent to those that are coming and visiting our project, and when you compare it with some of the other mines in the areas, that not all ore bodies are built the same. Like, in other words, a cubic metre of 1% copper at La Ramada is worth a lot more than the same grade at any of the other mines. Why? Because of the metallurgy. Higher recovery, higher concentrate grades, we have lower sulfides, and we have lower deleterious metal content, and it's coarser grain. When you put all those things together, it means that the net value of that 1% or 0.5% copper at La Ramada is worth a lot more than all the other mines and sort of, as far as we can tell, other advanced projects in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. Not everyone sort of grasped that, but now people are starting to sort of click to that. And then the other thing is, as you've been there, you've seen it, the infrastructure, the location, the advantage that we have there is, I think it doesn't get any better than where we're situated. And of course, the other bit of news that came out recently, we felt it was important because we had so much interest in it, was the granting of the mining permit for Grupo Mexico right next door to us. So while it's not out news as such, it's still very relevant to us, given there's going to be another big new mine right next door to us with one of the biggest copper producers in the world. So it shows, one, it's a great permitting environment. This is further reinforcement of that. But it also means that in terms of optionality of what we have in our Escacena project, not only in terms of development outcomes, but also potentially M&A, etc. It's also perhaps a lot better now than it was before that announcement.
The infrastructure and quite frankly the logistics for the region were impressive when we were down there, for sure. And I think saying things like the European Critical Raw Minerals Act, recognising copper, I think it bodes well for Spain for sure. I think, Tim, for us it's really a case of seeing the next 3 drill holes popping out. Cármenes would be really interesting. And then what's the timing on the resource main resource at
we're still looking at the second half of next year. We're just trying to at the moment make this final selection of who's going to actually write the JORC report, the NI 43-101 as well. So once we've done that, we'll just get on with it. I think we'll start to update our models and produce the resource. So I don't want to give a date just at this stage, but we are in that process now, selecting who's going to do the build the model, and just get on with it. And because it's such a simple geometry, and we've got good density of drill holes, we hope that it's not going to be a sort of long drawn out exercise and get this done pretty quickly. Of course, the deposit's still going to be open, still going to grow, and hopefully we're going to make another discovery around it. To help get us to that bigger goal, which I've explained before, 50 and then 100 million tonnes, to make it attractive as a standalone.
Tim, appreciate the update. Thanks very much. We'll see you in a few weeks with the new drill results, okay?
Yeah, not only Providencia, Bravo as well, and we've got a whole bunch of others lined up behind it. So, it's an exciting year ahead of us. Thanks, mate.